So the only thing left between me and completing the bottom section of the aft fuselage is this one row of rivets. So I'm about to get moving on that. Once that's complete, before we move on to the other side skins and the top skin, I've got to run the rudder cables down the center. I've got some other wiring that's got to go inside there. And also got to run some static lines for the pitot-static system. So that's coming up before we put the rest of the skins on. But if you'd like to catch up from the last video, see how we got to this point, stick around, here it comes. So at this point, I've got the bottom skin turned upside down with most of the bulkheads clecoed to the bottom of that. And so this is the initial riveting to the bottom skin. I've got some areas masked off that we're not going to rivet yet. Those will get riveted later on. But once this part's done, then we'll put the remaining bulkheads on the back. Those get attached with some side skins and move on there. And according to the instructions, they first want you to rivet to the left and right stiffeners that run down here. Then we do the stiffener that runs down the middle. And then from there, we'll do the two bulkheads as well as the bell crank bulkheads. So I'll get started laying the first rivets to attach the bulkheads to the bottom skin. So nothing too exciting here, just a lot of reaching underneath to line up the bucking bar and then using the rivet gun on the top to set the rivets. It's a little awkward reaching under with one arm and on the top with the other, but I'm just taking my time. And rather than thinking about how many rivets I need to set, I just focus on setting one rivet at a time. All right, so that's got all the ribs riveted down. What I'm going to do now, just to clean this up a little bit, is now that I've got all the rivets set, I'm going to go back through, check all these rivets since I've got good access to them. And then any that I don't like, I'm going to back rivet. I'll use a steel plate on the back side of it, set it flat, and then back rivet just to adjust and make sure that I've got everything the way I want it. And then move on from there. So I finished riveting the bottom skin here to the first couple of bulkheads. Next step, we're going to add some of the stiffeners and longerons on the side and also extend and add a couple more bulkheads toward the back. And that's preparation for starting to mount the side skins. One more step I've got to do before I put on the first side skin is there's a few wires that need to get run inside through those bulkheads. So I'll get busy doing that and keep moving on the tail. Per the plans, I've got everything upside down on some sawhorses to allow me to cleco this aft bulkhead and then slide the stiffeners into these slots on each side. As you can see, without this being upside down, the stiffeners would fall out. They're not clecoed to the bulkheads, but rather they sit in the slots and are then clecoed to the skins, which are clecoed to the bulkheads. So I'll take some time to count holes a few times to get the position of all these lined up. And then it's time to attach the longerons to each side, which are held in place with clecos. Shortly after I start to cleco the longerons to the side, I'm going to realize there's a bit of a problem doing this all upside down like this. As you can see, the longerons are going through the legs of the sawhorses, and if I cleco them, the whole assembly is going to be stuck. So I decided to turn it all over and find a workaround solution to keep the stiffeners from falling out. So the instructions tell you to leave this upside down while you get the longerons and the stiffeners in place. The problem is, if I attach the stiffeners to the rear bulkheads back there, they end up going in between the legs of the sawhorse, and then it's kind of trapped in there. So that wasn't working. So that's why I kind of turned it right side up for a little bit, which I know the reason they don't like doing it is because it kind of puts some stress on these guys until you get a skin on there. But I couldn't figure out any other way to make that work. So kind of carefully put the longerons on there and attach those. The stiffeners just lay in those brackets, so if it's not upside down, they fall out, and that's why it's got to be upside down. So what I've done is I've put the right skin on top with the stiffeners and longerons on there just temporarily to give me a little bit of structural strength. The first skin that actually goes on is the left side, but before you do that, you've got to run some wires into the bulkhead. So what I'm doing, put the right side on temporarily, I'll turn it upright, I'll run all the wires and things that I need to do, then I'll put the left side on and kind of proceed with the instructions from there. So a little bit out of order. But the cool thing is, if you look on the other side, it's really starting to look like an airplane. So that's pretty cool. As I mentioned, before attaching the side skin, the instructions call for routing a few wires along the top of the left upper stiffener. Specifically, these are the WH00059 and 00057 wires. The 59 is basically a telephone cable, while the 57 is a pretty large bundle of wires, which comes supplied as a kit pre-assembled in a harness from Steinair. At this point, the instructions tell you to jump ahead about 7 pages to, quote, review the system's installation instructions beginning on page 10-21 prior to installing the 1473 left and right side skins. Those 6 pages cover the installation of snap bushings, rudder cables, static lines for the pitot-static system, a couple of antennas, and finally the WH00057 and 59 wire bundles. I spent a great deal of time looking over these pages, trying to find anything important relative to attaching the side skins. I even installed several of the snap bushings and also spent more time than I should have actually starting to route the wire bundles. In actuality, the only page really relevant was the last page, showing where the 57 and 59 wire bundles go through the bulkheads. Alright, so sometimes I guess I'm a little bit of an idiot. So I got to the part in the plans where you're going to start running some of the wires here into the aft fuselage section. And as I talked about before, they talked about having this thing upside down to work with it. And the reason for that is that these little slits come this way. So if you try to put any wires in there, or for that matter, if you try to put your stiffener in there with it right side up, they fall out. The problem was, like I said, these guys get wrapped around the legs of the sawhorses, so upside down didn't work so well. So I turned it right side up. I put a skin on the other side to stabilize it while I worked on the left side, which is the first side that's supposed to go on there. So they also make a note in the plans about looking ahead in the section. It talks about all of this final wiring to get familiar with that before you move on to the next step, which is starting to feed the wire through these 2 bulkheads here before you put the skin on there. Well, in reading that, I kind of got wrapped up in the installation of it and really started thinking that they were talking about kind of really routing a lot of this wire, which also didn't make sense because it's like, well, why make that step, 5 pages down the line instead of just making it the next step? Well, that's because all they wanted me to do in the next step was just take the wire, put it through here, put it through there, leave the ends at both ends all coiled up, neat and nice like they were, and put the left skin on. Then, put the right skin on, turn this thing right side up, and get the skins riveted on. And all of this final wiring stuff that I've already kind of done a little bit of, that comes much later on. But it's fine because I don't think any of this stuff's going to get in my way, and if it does, I can always move that back out of the way if I need to. So what I did to make it easier to work with it upright is I just put 2 Clecos in here and then a little piece of tape there just keeps that from falling out while I'm kind of working with that. I was also concerned that you're supposed to put the right side on after the left side. Didn't know if one got in the way or not. The only reason behind that is just because these cables get routed on the left side. So you want to get those put in place, put the left side on, then you can get the right side on. So it's fine that I did them out of order. Not a big deal. It's just cleat code over there anyway. So what I'll get busy doing now, I've just got these sitting inside there. If I want to, I can kind of wrap those ends up if they get in my way during the riveting, and I think that's part of the reason, is that when you're riveting the skin and trying to reach inside and buck, you don't want all this stuff in your way. Because the next step with the wiring would be to take it and do tie wraps to run it all nice and neat. But I think the idea there is you don't want the wire and stuff in your way when you're bucking all the skins on the outside. You just want this there, coil up the two ends, and then get the skins on. So that's what I'm going to do next. Also, I kind of found the easiest way to put the skin on, instead of having it upside down, is actually laying it on its side. What I ended up doing is I laid it on the left side initially, and then you can lay that skin right on top, cleco that down, and then what I'll do here, keep all that in place, is I'll just put it on its right side, and I'll cleco all this stuff on there, and move on from there.
As you can see, the 59 and 57 wire bundles sit nicely in the channel that's created by the stiffener. I'll tidy these wires up once both lower side skins have been riveted. So with the wires and stiffeners in place, I lay the left side skin on and then proceed to cleco everything in place.
Alright, so that's got the side skins all clecoed on, and I've got the wire embedded where it's supposed to be down in there. So the next step is to do a little bit of work here with the final aft bottom skin, and also the aftmost rib that's got the tie down on the back of that. So these guys get riveted together, and then we'll cleco this assembly to the bottom here. That'll get the last bulkhead in place. And then it's time to rivet the sides together.
Trivia time. Peter putting the crew to the test with Traeger's NFL.
This next step is definitely easier said than done. The aft bottom skin needs to be clecoed between the bottom skin and the 1410 bulkhead. So I first remove the clecos holding these two together. Next, I have to try to slip the aft skin between the two while also getting the sides of the aft bottom skin in between the side skins and the bottom stiffeners. Unfortunately, the aft bottom skin is very thick, and it's very difficult to bend to fit between the sides, while also trying to get it under the bottom skin. Eventually I decided that this is going to be a lot easier to do with the fuselage upside down on the sawhorses. And eventually I get it in.
Alright, so that was a little bit tricky getting this this aft bottom skin in there. I tried it with it right side up. I really didn't want to go in there. The problem is you're trying to get it underneath the bottom skin here, which is already riveted all the way to the very back, so that doesn't lift up very much at all. And then what you've also got to do is try to get the sides down in between this outer skin and the stringer that runs along here and here, and also get it up under the side skins that are here. So I took all those clecos out to loosen that up, but the problem is the bottom edges of this kind of flare out pretty substantial, and this is a pretty thick piece. So I tried bending it a little bit, but that just didn't do anything.
So turned it back upside down, which just kind of relaxed everything else. And what I ended up doing was, and I would have undone what I did since I didn't film it and do it again, but I'm not doing it. So I just kind of loosely slid it into place with everything nice and loose. It was kind of resting still on top of the bottom skin, but underneath these side skins that go out there. And I just got one corner down in here. And then once I got that down, then I kind of backed it up so it was just outside of the bottom skin and just kind of pushed it down until it went inside here. And then once it was there, then it was fairly easy, as you saw, I think it showed at the end, of just kind of sliding it up into place. And then a little tricky getting it lined up there, but once I got one hole where I could get a cleco in it, that kind of helped pull everything in place. So now I think everything's good. So now I just need to cleco everything back together on there. Because yeah, a lot of these other clecos, once you have the skin on there, it's really all in the way trying to get that in there. So, all right, crisis averted. All right, so now it's just time to rivet all of this together. It's a lot of rivets. The plans call for first riveting the aft bottom skin to the 1411 and 1410 bulkheads. This is definitely a bit of a tough reach, trying to get the rivet gun on one side of the skin and line up the bucking bar on the other. In the end, I was able to reach the 1411 bulkhead okay, but decided to hold off on the 1410 until I could get a little bit of help reaching the other side. With that, I move on to riveting the left and right lower side skins. I begin by setting the rivets between the side skins and the 1411 and 1410 bulkheads. The instructions recommend riveting the flat surfaces before moving on to the curves at the bottom in order to help the skin lay flat. So I begin by setting rivets in the longerons running down the length of the fuselage. Next, I rivet the skins down the bulkheads to the upper stiffener. Then rivet the stiffeners. And again, work my way down the bulkheads to the lower stiffener. So that's got one side skin done down to the part where it curves. So they say to do the straight edges first. So I did the bulkhead stiffener that runs down the center of that. The longeron's done. I'm all the way down to this bottom stiffener where that's where the curve starts. So I think my plan is do the other side, the flat part as well. And then I'll probably lay it on its side and start working on the curves and go from there. It's a lot of rivets, but so far it's not going too bad.
Could be pulled out of those sectors.
At this point, I begin working my way down the length of the lower stiffener. As you can see, this is pretty much the maximum reach, trying to rivet both sides by myself. I found it helpful when setting rivets blindly like this, that once I have the bucking bar on the shank and the gun on the head, I push the rivet head out a little bit with the bucking bar, and then back down again with the gun before squeezing the trigger. This is just a final check for alignment of the bar and the shank, and it helps to verify that I have the gun and the bar both on the same rivet. Of course, not every rivet is going to go so well, so there were plenty of opportunities to get better at drilling rivets out. Doing this, I slowly and carefully deepen the hole a little at a time until I can get a good grip on it with the punch, and then just break the head off.
With the appropriate ethics officials regarding the law right now, they do not need to be Senate confirmed, of course.
But they did sign an 11th Circuit brief arguing that they should be. I was just getting to the clarity of the difference between a position you've advocated and what the current law is. Thank you for that. Look, bluntly, to me, refusing to answer a hypothetical when there is clear and concrete previous history raises some concerns for me. I think Chris Ray has done an outstanding job.
Next, I reach inside to twist and pull the shank out.
Do you remember a gentleman by the name of Sam Bankman-Fried?
In order to reach the final row of rivets, which connect the bottom skin to the side skins, I'm going to need a little bit of help. So my son comes out to help me. I have him working the rivet gun on the outside while I hold the bucking bar on the inside.
All right, ready? Yep.
And it all works out great.
A little more. Good. Ready? Yep. Ready? Yep. Good. Ready? Yep. Good.
All right, well, that finishes up the bottom of the aft fuselage. We've got the bottom skins and the bottom side skins on. And so now it's just time to wire up some stuff on the inside and get the rudder cables and all that good stuff in there. So that's coming up next, but that build went really well. As you saw there at the end, there's some rivets that it's pretty much impossible to reach with one person. So I got a little bit of help from my son with that. And that went incredibly well. He's never riveted anything before. I just kind of showed him how to use the rivet gun. And we talked a little bit about the philosophy of just kind of getting the right feel for the rivet gun and kind of how long the burst takes. And picked it up really quick. Actually, those are without a doubt some of the nicest, most consistent rivets in the entire build so far. So my advice, if you've got somebody that can help you rivet, I would do that at any stage of the game. Being able to hold onto the bucking bar with two hands and make sure that it stays nice and perpendicular to the shank, and at the same time the person with a rivet gun being able to use that second hand to stabilize the gun, keep it centered up, it produces a beautiful product. So the rivets come out consistent and they come out beautiful.
So much better control than obviously trying to do it on both sides. So yeah, I think moving forward with it, especially getting into the wings and things like that, definitely as often as possible, gonna get a little bit of assistance with that, just to get some nicer, cleaner, more consistent rivets out of it. So initially, knowing that I was gonna need a little bit of help reaching some of these rivets, I opted to try for this tool first. A lot of people use this when they're doing both sides of the wing skins. And the idea behind this is it kind of works like a back rivet plate. So if you get somebody to help you and they don't know much about riveting, the idea is they put this on the outside where the flat head of the rivet is, and then you use a back rivet set on the inside on the shank and just shrink the shank down. That way the person, you know, on the outside doesn't have to do anything but just hold some constant pressure on it. It's got a nice big face on it and it should work really good. And then you can control the back riveting on the inside. So we tried that initially. And while it worked fine with this holding on the outside, when I was back riveting on the inside, back there in the tail, it just wasn't giving me consistent results with the back riveting. I think maybe it's because there's a little bit of curve back there. It's also kind of a cramped space. But it was just never giving me very consistent rivets. So after a couple of them, I just decided to abandon that and show my son how to use a rivet gun. And it only took him a few minutes to figure it out. And like I said, the results came out beautiful, as you saw in the video there. So I'll hang on to this. I think when you're working on a larger area, probably on the wing skins, maybe this works better. Maybe it'll be easier just to continue to rivet. So we'll hang on to that and see if I use it somewhere else. But yeah, my advice, just show them how to use the rivet gun and go from there. All right, so that's a wrap on this video. Sorry it took a little bit of time to get this one out, getting through the holidays and all that stuff. Just haven't really had the time to work on the editing side of things, but try to get more consistent going forward. But yeah, so that'll wrap up the tail of it. I'm gonna get busy wiring up the inside and moving forward from there. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next video.